It's a simplifying a fraction is basically taking that fraction and breaking it down into an equivalent fraction that's the same value. It's just smaller numbers that are easier to understand. So what you do when you simplify a fraction is you need to divide the numerator and the denominator by your greatest common factor. Now, I'm not going to make a 350 T chart and figure out all the factors and then do 1200. That's just going to take too much time. But I'm going to just go and estimate what my greatest common factor is. 350 ends in 50, 1200 ends with two zeros. I'm assuming 50, I think 50 does go into both of these. So I'm going to divide both sides by 50. 350 divided by 50, I know 50 goes into 306 times, so it has to go into 357 times. And then I do 1200 divided by 50. I can do that off to the side here if I'm not sure. 50 goes into 120 twice. Subtract 100, left with 20. Bring down a 0. 50 goes into 200 4 times. No remainder. And so 7/24. Now I have to think, am I done here? Well, do 7 and 24 have any common factors besides 1? Because 1 goes into both. But besides 1, do they have any common factors? Well, the only factors of 7 are 1 and 7. And neither of those get 7 doesn't go into 24. 1 will go into 24. So I'm actually done here. There's no more common factors that I can divide by. But let's say I didn't know that 50 was the greatest common factor. What if I just said, well, these both end in 0, so I'm going to divide both sides by 10. And let's see what we end up getting. 350 divided by 10 gives me 35. 1200 divided by 10 gives me 120. Now, if I look at this, I can see, are there any common factors between 35 and 120? Well, 35 ends in 5 and 120 ends in 0. So I know 5 will go into both of them. So let's see what happens if I divide both sides by 5. What I'm actually doing here is I'm actually dividing by 1 whole. 5/5 is 1 whole. And since I'm dividing by 1, that's why it's giving me an equivalent fraction. That's why these, when you simplify, they're still equivalent. So 35 divided by 5 gives me 7. 120 divided by 5 gives me 24, because 5 goes into 120 times, 5 goes into 24 times. 7/24. No more common factors. That's what I got up here. And just a quick note, I divided by 10 first, and then by 5. And if I multiply 10 by 5, I get 50. Woo, mind blown. All right, there you go. That's simplifying fractions.